welcome back. Before we jump into part two, I want to quickly ground us in where we left off in our last conversation. In part one, we unpacked the New York Times question, did liberal feminism ruin the workplace? And together we explored how that question oversimplifies decades of cultural, economic, and systemic change. We talked about how feminism didn't ruin the workplace, but it revealed longstanding inequities, the differences between liberal feminism and intersectional feminism, and how systems originally designed for men still shape women's leadership experiences today, and why performative inclusion isn't the same as systemic equity. We ended part one right at the point where the article pushes an even more polarizing idea that the claim that institutions have become too feminized and too emotional. And that's exactly where we're going to pick up today. So, welcome back to part two of our double take with AWL Special Edition. If you've been following the series, you know part one opened up the core question that we already talked about, and that in this chapter, we're going to talk about the idea of feminization in the workplace, the framing of wokeness as a feminine pathology, and the assumption that emotional intelligence makes organizations weak rather than strong. And we're unpacking all of that through the lens of AWL's work, where we focus on emotionally intelligent leadership, psychological safety, and intersectional equity. And I'm joined again today by AWL Partners co-founders and creators of the podcast, Jennifer M. and Melissa M. and our strategist, Faustina, whose next gen perspective has really added depth and clarity to this conversation. So let's pick up exactly where we left off.
Shirley, before you get too deep into it, I just want to say something.
Yes.
When did woke become bad?
I was just talking to somebody about that today too. I don't know. Um, I equate wokeness to like empathy and action. And I do think that it is a huge reflection for the people who have a problem with it of how you can or can't put yourself into somebody else's shoes. Like just that simple. But I don't know. What were you going to say, Melissa?
Well, I was just going to say, I think, Jen, it's similar to when we talk about like when did diversity become race, right? Like it's like we've redefined words somehow when it's like there's these emotions connected to words and they're not actually connected to the real definition, right? Like
Yeah,
to me, it's
woke
almost
has become weaponized.
Yeah.
Right.
It's become a weaponized
wokeness.
word,
Yeah.
and it's like it literally means be kind. It literally means give people opportunity. Like
Yeah.
But if
it's annoying to me. It's just annoying. Very annoying.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just gonna be real with you.
No,
So
it's how I feel. I feel the same way.
People don't like sharing power.
That's it.
That's it.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yeah, and that's where we left off. I will ask the question, and Jennifer said sharing power was one of the keys to how we can move forward in a better way. Being okay with sharing power. So yeah, exactly. Well, to get us back on subject, which we kind of are, we were going to talk about the wokeness piece, but we had to get our feelings about it out first. But the article suggested that institutions have become too feminized, and anyone is open to kind of give me their take on that. Like, do you feel like institutions have become too feminized? What does that even mean?
Well, I think that's the question. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that is literally what I think the question is
Right.
what is even meant by that?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's something, oh, I can't remember what book I was reading, but and I'm not going to get it say it well, but there was a psychologist in like the 60s who essentially assessed a boy child and a girl child and identified the behaviors of the boy as leadership qualities and the behavior of the girl as non-leadership qualities. And that is essentially where all of the workplace stereotypes of what makes a good leader come from, is from this study of two children and this definition that these are leadership qualities. And so I now wish I could remember what book it's in. Anyways, but and that to me is, it's like, who was this person to make that decision that now defines all of our representation? Like if you, again, and I think this is a very North American thing, as I've spent more time in different countries, like I think you see if I use Kenya as an example, some of the behaviors that we would deem as masculine behaviors in North America are actually very feminine behaviors. I've seen, like, I find the women in Kenya to be a lot louder and a lot more boisterous, where the men are a lot gentler when they speak and a lot softer when they speak. So does that mean they're more feminized? Like, I don't like it's so just odd to me.
Yeah,
Even
it's
in the podcast that all of this originated from, they couldn't even define what they were talking about.
Right.
Like they decided to have one of those academic type arguments, which again got on my nerves. Just saying. Just saying. I have a lot of feelings today, y'all. Sorry.
I mean when
Good.
people
Good.
yeah, when people start arguing about semantics, they
Mhm.
just yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. They're trying to emulate some sort of academic argument, but they're not getting it.
Yeah, exactly. I
Um,
Maybe because
yeah,
it's a stupid argument.
yeah.
and yeah, like why do we have this question in the first
It's
place?
unbased. It's completely unbased. I was just going to add to your question, Shirley.
Hmm.
Um, to me, equating the feminization of something to then wokeness, and so
Hmm.
the process of feminizing wokeness to me is really concerning because wokeness has already, as we said before, been weaponized as something negative. So to on
Hmm.
top of that, feminize it, which is also weaponized as something negative. Now, this is a double whammy for anyone who is trying to exist in these corporate spaces or non-corporate spaces,
Mhm.
and someone who identifies as a woman and is
Right.
trying to live and exist in these spaces. And now, just their presence alone is seen as either a diversity hire or feminizing the workplace, which is somehow bad, and all of these different things. And then on what you were saying, Mel, with the boys and girls. I think what's interesting is also the amount of contradictions in this, like in the buildup of this societal expectation, because it's also a common understanding that little girls will get told, "Oh, you guys just mature faster. Girls
Hmm.
mature faster, and boys will be boys," and there's that kind of thing too. And so, if we mature faster, right? Then why are we not the leaders and the natural leaders? So nothing makes sense about it, and
Yeah,
everything is meant to be to suppress women in that.
that's exactly what I was going to say. I think when you create a situation like that, it is only there to create a form of oppression. And we can cross it over into so many other things, but this is an example. When you decide what is black and what is white, and this is what it is academically, scientifically, like this is the way, and you're the ultimate judge of it, all it does is create another ism, another form of oppression
Mhm.
toward a group. Another way to make people feel less than and create more division versus
Yeah.
we embrace each other's differences and how we can lead together, like how we can enhance each other and enhance a space, you know. But I could like talk about that forever. But I really do hope you can find that book. We might need to put it in the comments because that is insane.
Yeah,
That's
I'll
insane.
figure out which it's from. I think I know what it's from, but I'll go back and I'll make sure.
Yeah, yeah. That is so. But Melissa, before you um, go away, I do have a question for you. um, from your work inside of organizations, like in the corporate space and things like that, how do you respond to the idea that workplaces have become too emotional or too soft?
So, and I've talked about this before. I think it's really interesting every time we use the term emotional. So, an example that I always like to give is in one of my workplaces, I got told somebody was too emotional because they were crying. However, and in this case, they were a female, but that somebody who was male who was yelling didn't
Mm,
get termed emotional. And so I find it very interesting that we use the term emotional to define emotions of women, but we don't use the term emotional to define the emotions of men in this context when we're talking about feminized workplaces versus non-feminized. Because I would argue that if we go back to old school ways of workplaces where maybe we yelled at people and maybe we disciplined really hard in those things, why is that not emotional? Because it is emotional, it's just on a different side of the spectrum.
right.
So
Yeah.
so that's where I always go when that part of the conversation comes up. This idea of too soft, I always challenge in the sense of just because we're not yelling doesn't mean we're not holding people accountable.
Right.
Just because we're not disciplining harshly doesn't mean people don't have expectations. This need for things to be one or the other
Hmm.
is where the challenge really comes in. We
Hmm.
can use the word and. I can
Yeah.
be empathetic and hold somebody accountable. Those
Right.
things can coexist.
100%. Right, right, right. Um, Jen, and thank you for that, Melissa. That I don't really even have anything else to say. Jen, why do you think emotional awareness and empathy still get framed as liabilities instead of leadership strengths? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the issue would be that it can't be controlled. You can't control feelings, right? And you can't, well, I guess you can tell someone not to feel something some way, but in all honesty, we what it boils down to is we can't control it. And so when you can't control something, then we weaponize it or we make it negative, like feminism, like wokeness that we've been talking about, right? And so I think that's why when we're talking about emotional awareness and we're talking about being empathetic, because those are things that can't be controlled, it's not like you can't check box it, you can't structure it in the way that you can maybe doing it things in another way. Can't control it, weaponize it, make it bad. We don't like that. It's not something that is is productive.
Right. It sounds like
When research actually shows the opposite, which is very interesting, right? Because businesses that hone in on ensuring the enhancement of emotional intelligence, where they're doing training with their people, where they're practicing psychological safety, where they're ensuring that there's diversity, and we're not talking about just race, but diversity in experience and
mhm.
diversity in
Ages,
Yeah.
sexualities, all the
ages,
things.
sexualities, all of those things. Those are the most productive and successful companies.
And
So
innovative.
it's interesting. It's interesting.
And their innovation is increased because you have that difference in thought and the different perspectives that you
Exactly.
kind of that you wouldn't have if you didn't have the diverse group and the training there.
Mhm.
So, okay, well, Faustina, I have a question for you. How does your generation see emotional expression in leadership? Is it something people expect, or do they still hesitate to show?
I think it's a bit more expected. Um I think it's a mix for us, Gen Z, because we're coming from parents that are used to being told that they shouldn't show emotions in the
Mm-hmm.
workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you have our generation and a little bit of millennials as well trying to shift that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something that's refreshing when it does happen. I think items like psychological safety, clear communication, equity-focused emotional
Mm-hmm.
intelligence policies, all those sorts of initiatives that workforces have started to incorporate, those are refreshing to see, and they make someone feel more understood, more supported.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wouldn't say it's an expectation less. It's yet. It's more of a nice to have still.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be nice to get there. And I think especially with COVID-19,
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic really shifted how we talk about mental health. A lot
Mm-hmm.
more people became more connected on social media, and everyone was sort of depressed because everyone was sort of alone. And so that kind of generated the we're in it together mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
then came remote working. And so workforces and the work cultures have shifted, whether we like it or not, and change has happened. Maybe forced by a pandemic, but it's true, it has happened. And so I think responses that try to create mechanisms for the better, yeah, it's refreshing to see. And I hope it's there to stay.
Yeah.
I will also add one more thing. I think it's important that these mechanisms actually show that they care. So
Mm.
if, say, it's a pizza party or the equivalent of a remote pizza party, that's that's a little bit more performative. But when there's actual real policies that make people feel actually supported, maybe to do with childcare or
Mm-hmm.
maternity leave, whatever it may be, um, then we can see more safer workforces and workplaces that don't just have the fluff of the policies, but
Right.
actually there's actual structures that, you feel more supported by. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I totally agree. I love exactly where everything is going because where the article kind of treated emotion as weakness, what I'm hearing is that, we have a greater capacity for deeper leadership. Like that's the opportunity, right? Um, so now we're going to talk about systems in leadership. And Melissa, we'll start with you. When you enter an organization, what are some clear signs that inclusion is being, as Faustina was talking about, performed versus practiced?
I think it comes down to the systems, right? If we're trying to run a business with the same systems that have always been in place, but
Hmm.
say we care about
Hmm.
something else, I think that's where the break happens because old systems don't work with new thinking.
Hmm.
Um, so it's like looking at things like pay equity, right?
Hmm.
Which is a pretty, if we say we care about women, but women are still not receiving equal pay for equal work.
Right.
Do we really care about women?
Right.
Like if we say we want women in the workforce, but we have really restrictive hours that don't allow for childcare
Right.
considerations, do we really want women in the workforce? So I think it's that misalignment between old system and new and the words that come out of our mouth. Like that to me
Hmm.
is easiest and simplest way that it's it's being performed versus actually being what they truly are working towards. And I think pay is the easiest one to look at.
Hmm.
If you really wanted to, you would make sure that there was equal pay. And we know that that's not the case.
Right. Yeah. And I like what you brought up about the childcare piece too. This is huge. And it could be something as simple as just having the flexibility in your schedule to be able to accommodate dropping your kid off and picking your kid up on time. The
Yeah.
stress of that, like my kid is what 18 now, but I remember how stressful it was. You got meetings and all this stuff, and you're the one that's got to take him to daycare and all of that, or take him to school, or whatever the situation is. You have a child that has to get to where they need to be, but you also need to be here at a specific time, no matter what. And
Yeah.
this is with you in the day and age of where, hey, I can work some hours at home if I need to make up the difference for, what you want from me. But the flexibility is not always there. And it's a
Yeah.
simple ask. What are you losing by doing
A
that? You
hundred
actually
percent.
get productivity out of me from that.
Yeah, I always laugh summer camp, right? Like Faustina, I know you're not there yet, but I'm sure every single one of us on this call can sit there. Like I used to sit there and go, who can take their kid to camp from 10 to 3? What
Right.
hours do I
Who
work to
made
have
these
to be at
hours?
basketball camp from 10 to 3? Like what happens until 10 and after 3? Like
Right.
I used to take vacation so my kids could go to camp. Like
100%. Right. Which even that to me is a disservice to the woman because I'm using PTO for that. And this is
yeah,
supposed to be for me to have, just like you, have good time off to just enjoy myself. But usually it's for a personal assignment.
yeah.
But that's another thing for another day. I swear this could be like so many different things to talk about. Uh,
Well, okay, so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking in my head, and maybe I'm being idealistic, but mm, this is something that impacts men as well,
yeah.
right? So men also are the ones doing the drop-offs now, right? And so are we, it would be an interesting study to see the businesses or organizations where a lot of men have to do these female type tasks, if their workplace has changed their policies to be
Accommodate.
more accommodating.
That would be a
Because
curious study.
I mean, we
I'd be
know
curious.
already. Sorry, Jen, go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead, go ahead, go
I
ahead.
was I was just gonna say we already know that men get celebrated more for just doing parenting duties.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not there yet, but I've seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, men will just spend time with their kids, and it will be babysitting instead of parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm
Oh,
assuming,
he's such a good dad. Well, he's
Yeah,
yeah,
doing his daddy duty.
right, right.
Yeah, it's a good question, Jen. Like, I think it would be interesting to see, does that change policy? And then I would also question, though, with that is, are men more willing to ask for that because it is celebrated, like Faustina's saying, versus women are less inclined to ask for those things because it's not celebrated in the same way.
Right.
Like, even if men are doing more of the drop-offs and pickups, is it is the ask easier for them than for us? I don't know. I will say I've always been lucky enough to kind of work in a role
Yeah.
where I controlled my own hours. So I could maneuver stuff around. The joy of working 100 hours a week. You had some flexibility to it. So
Yeah, yeah. I do. I would love if anyone in who's watching, if you find that study and drop us something in the comments, let us know. But I am curious. I do like the point that you make, though, that, men may find it easier. Just in general, what is it they talk about that men will apply for a job that they're not even qualified for?
yeah,
It's kind of like that thing. It's like they have
yeah,
the word I won't use to be able to say, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to ask for. Whereas we don't always do that. Like we don't always advocate for ourselves as easily as they do or go for something as easily as they do. And partly when you look at something like this, whether it's pay or daycare or whatever it is, you feel like you're being looked down on or you didn't earn the right because of the way that the system is set up, you know. So
yeah.
it all of this, obviously, I've always said, though, we do have to speak up more and try to change the system. The system's not going to change for us. We got to push for it. But yeah,
And what you
okay,
were gonna say, Shirley, is that they have the ovaries to ask for? That
yeah,
was what
yeah, those things, yeah. Jen. So Jen, I have a question for you. How does emotional safety, and I say that even along the lines where we were talking about just now, we don't feel safe to ask the question. But anyway, how does emotional safety connect to feminist and equity-based leadership? What are your thoughts on that?
I go back to It kind of goes back to what I was just saying, because I really think depending on the workplace you're in, you'll see a different dynamic, right?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
for example, I worked somewhere where there was a male leader, and he was very involved to the point we were just making with his child.
Hmm.
Very involved with his child. So if a meeting was scheduled at 9, he would just say, "Hey, no, that can't happen. It's gonna have to be later because I have to go pick up my daughter, or I have to drop off
Hmm.
my daughter, or
Hmm.
whatever the
Hmm.
case was," right? Whereas I don't think I heard one time any of the female leaders in the room use their child as an excuse for not being able to do something.
I
And
would
so
never feel safe doing that.
the emotional safety part is like, and then we feel gaslit because, well, why didn't you just say something?
Right.
That
Mhm.
question, why didn't you just say something? And it's like, well, I didn't feel safe enough to be able to. Well, why didn't you feel safe enough? And then it turns back onto it's your own fault. And then you feel like you're in crazy land.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
seriously,
Yeah.
seriously. And I think for things to be able to change, leaders have to specifically say and intentionally say, hey, listen, this is a child-friendly zone. Okay. So
Right.
if you have things going on with your kids, or you have things going on with your parents, because a number of us are in that sandwich generation, right?
Right.
Where we've got young kids and older parents, and we're taking care of both, right?
Yeah.
Then if there's some stuff like that's coming up, then feel free to, let's talk about it, let's chat about it, let's work our meetings around that stuff. Because
Hmm.
when that happens, people feel more free to be able to actually say something. And
Right.
it's not
Right.
enough to just have a policy,
Right.
because you can have a policy, but if it's frowned upon, no one's going to use it.
Right, exactly. 100%. I agree. I think it goes a little bit back to the performative piece. Like all day long, you can smile and say that this is the way, but when I actually go to do it, I need to feel safe to do that. And I still circle all of that back to if you feel safe and those policies exist and you use them, you get an increase in your productivity because now I feel like it's like that thing of when a car salesman gives you a Coke and you feel obligated to buy kind of thing. It's like, okay, if you're going to give me this, I feel a sense of I need to reciprocate. So I'll give you
Well,
more of my time or more of my innovation or more willingness to be flexible for you too, for the growth of your company because of your flexibility with me, which I feel like benefits business.
totally. And I think to what Jen's saying, like it's that difference between um like, again, having it in a policy and not doing anything with it, or the getting in the room, that somebody getting in the room and saying, hey, this meeting's at 9, that affects me. How does it affect you guys? Like, and actually like, or are there any exceptions that people need because of their kids, like, and actually putting it
Right.
out
Yeah.
there and asking the question, letting
Yes.
people, giving people the space that says it's safe to have this conversation versus
Right.
just going, well, it's in the policy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a big difference.
So yeah, it's in literally in how you lead, like in what you communicate. If this is something that is true and we embody it, it's a part of our everyday conversations. It's a part of how we do everything. So then people do feel safe. Yeah. Very important point. All right, so we are coming to the tail end here.
Is there a
So,
part 3, Shirley?
yeah, no, I don't know if we have enough work. We don't have to do a part three, but I do have one last question before we close out. Faustina, I want to talk to you about your generation's perspective. What does true intersectional leadership look like, and what are younger professionals expecting now? I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, but
Poor
Yeah.
Faustina, she's the voice of a generation.
Yeah. I would say I'm quite a feminist representation of my generation. There's also the other spectrum, which is quite a scary other end of the spectrum, but especially nowadays. But we don't have to get into that.
That's a whole
But
other
yes,
episode too.
another part. But yeah, and it kind of, I think my opinion on that kind of sums up everything we've been talking about.
Hmm.
I think true intersectional leadership is defined not only by these surface level policies that we've talked about, and diversity hiring and those kinds of more things that we have an issue with, but there are also deeper shifts in cultures and institutions. If your company is now retiring remote working and is going back to an in-person model, have you
Hmm.
maybe considered how that may affect people with accessibility concerns that
Hmm.
maybe even these accessibility issues came up because of the pandemic that forced us to get remote in the first place.
Hmm.
There's now a lot of transportation issues, inaccessibility to transportation, or even parents with young children who don't have the resources to be outsourcing care like that. Um, so are we providing greater benefits to make up for that trade-off that we've talked about? Or what are the mechanisms here? And I think intersectionality is that it's considering that and it's considering what each person brings to the table because we're not all the same and we're not all just empty vessels that come to work and don't bring in our backgrounds. We all come with
Hmm.
our own um, baggage, and that's not to say it's a negative thing. I think it's a good thing, as was discussed earlier as well. I think
Hmm.
our diversity, true diversity, and our baggage is what makes it interesting and makes it efficient in a way. But that's what companies should then be highlighting and celebrating through these
Right.
policies that help us maybe, I don't know if buffer is the right word, but kind of cushion that trade-off that we're experiencing now.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's
100%.
what I think.
So last thing, and we're going to close out. This is for anyone who wants to answer. We were just talking about the intersectionality piece and how when people look at it, they mostly only look at race or gender, but there's so many different things to consider. um, Other identities and experiences, and they get left out of the equity conversation. How do we make sure that those perspectives are built into policy and not added as afterthoughts?
When you're making the policies, who's not in the room?
Oh, really good.
Mm.
Yeah.
And make sure that if you're making a policy for a specific group, make sure that they're represented in that room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I would say, and to add to that, are the are the policies so restrictive that everybody even needs to be in the room? Like, why are we still we should be at a point where there's some level of autonomy where we don't need to have Shirley, you and I both worked for big corporate, where I swear policies and processes were made because one person did something and nobody wanted to hold them accountable. So then all of a sudden we all had to follow a new process. And it's like the frequency that I see that happen within an organization, I'm like, actually, and again, ironically, in male-based organizations, not feminist organizations, where we're not just actually having the right conversations. Just deal with that one bad employee, and then the rest of us don't need policy.
Right.
Don't be scared to have that conversation.
Right.
And then I just wanted to sort of do what Jen's saying and what Faustina's saying. And it's just because I lived in the space for a little bit of time. The other place that's often overlooked, that it's such a huge opportunity to support everybody, is in benefits. I worked in the employee benefit space for a short period of time, but it's such an opportunity, to not just look at a traditional benefits package and to consider things like IVF treatments being covered and things like that, like gender reassignments, things being covered, those hormones being covered, those types of things are so impactful. And 99% of the time, they don't cost the company any more money, but the impact they can have just by them being available.
Right.
It's like that. There's power in things like that. So to me, it's looking at those things that we don't even realize, that we never have to look at again, because they're just available to people.
100%. So it's very clear. Well, before I keep going, anything you want to share on that topic, Faustina? Sorry.
Not that necessarily. I think it was covered, but if I could just add something a little bit about feminism to wrap up on my end. I would say feminism clearly isn't the problem. It's these disorganized structures that allow for people to abuse the system, if anything. If you install clear lines of communications, policy that actually works, a safety insured leadership that actually cares and shows that they care and asks the right questions as well, there is no harm in practicing feminism as an institution. And I think that has become really clear. And also, just to add on, I don't think we touched on this, but feminism isn't about taking down men. And I think there's a big fear about that. And that's not even the meaning of feminism. It's about taking down a system that celebrates masculinity in men and masculine traits versus allowing women in the room and other different traits that people can have. So yeah, that's my concluding thought.
Mic drop, we
right. I think on that note, we're done. So thank you, Faustina, and thank you, Jen, and thank you, Mel, for such a I would say powerful and honest conversation. If the question was whether liberal feminism ruined the workplace, today I think we've made it clear it didn't ruin it. It revealed what's already there and what's ready to be reimagined, and we're all a part of that. Thank you all out there for listening, and we hope this conversation helps you reflect on your own leadership, and not just how you lead others, but how you hold space for change. And this has been a Double Take with AWL podcast. We'll see you next time.
Bye.